Hey there taggers! In this video, I'd like to share a lesson from my Udemy course, Blender for 3D Beginners. The course will be available to all of you very soon. Without further ado, let's get to the lesson. In this lesson, we are going to talk about selection in Blender. Although we've briefly touched on some of them in previous lessons, it's time to dive deeper. After navigation, selection is one of the most crucial topics in Blender and helps us use our time very effectively. Sometimes, selecting objects one by one can be impossible. In such cases, selection tricks come to our rescue. I think I've sufficiently underlined how important this is. Now, let's see what these selection commands are. We've mentioned this before, but it's worth repeating. One of the most basic shortcuts we'll use to select multiple objects in Blender is Shift. Every object you select while holding down Shift will be added to your selection. Remember that the last selection you selected is always the active object. This applies not only in object mode, but also in edit mode for vertices, edges, and faces. By holding down Ctrl and drawing a selection box in object mode, you can deselect object within the area. The same applies in edit mode. However, the Ctrl key has another use related to selection in edit mode, the Select Shortest Path command. To use this command, select an element and then, while holding down Ctrl, select a distance element. This can be a vertex, edge, or face. This will select the shortest path between the two elements. It's an extremely useful shortcut that should not be forgotten. To select all the objects in my scene in object mode, I use the shortcut A. You can remember this from the word all. If we press Alt-A, it clears all selections, meaning nothing is selected. But there is much easier way to do this, pressing A twice. You can use whichever you want. Both of these commands also work in edit mode. Let's say we've selected some objects in our scene, but we want to invert the selection. The shortcut for this is Ctrl I. You can remember this from the word invert. This is an incredibly useful command, especially when we've made complex selection where we want to exclude a lot of elements. Now, let's look at the circle command, which has the shortcut C. When you press C, your cursor will temporarily turn into a circle. By left-clicking and painting over the objects you want to select, you can add them to your selection. The important thing to remember here is that you need to paint over an object's pivot point. An object's pivot point might not always be in its center. You can adjust the circle size by moving your cursor wheel, by holding down middle mouse button and dragging it, or by holding down Shift and left-clicking, you can deselect objects. You can exit circle select mode by right-clicking. By using Ctrl right-click, you can draw a selection lasso and select the objects you enclose. If you use Ctrl Shift right-click, you can draw a selection area to deselect elements. If you have an element selected in edit mode and want to grow the selection, you can use the shortcut Ctrl Numpad plus. Using the same logic, you can shrink the selection with Ctrl Numpad minus. As we've mentioned before, if you Alt left click on an edge in edit mode, it will select the entire edge loop. The selection will continue until the loop is broken. For Blender to understand that a loop continues, a vertex must be a quadpole. This is why we generally work with quads when we're modeling. Quads offers us a lot of editing possibilities with loops and edge flow. In reality, the program visualizes that faces with only triangles. We'll go into this in more detail when we talk about shading, but for now, let's not get off topic. Don't forget, with the Alt-Shift-Click shortcut, you can add new edge loops to your previous selections or remove edge loops from them. You can also select vertices and faces as loops. However, there's a difference here. A vertex or a face is part of both a horizontal and a vertical loop. Therefore, when you alt-click, the loop selection will follow whichever direction your mouse cursor is closest to. Similar to loops, you can also select edge rings. The shortcut for this is Ctrl Alt-click. A ring selection selects a parallel edge of a selected edge. For instance, after selecting edge as a ring, you can select all the vertical edge loops by using command select loops, edge loops. Now, let's make a ring selection again and choose checkered deselect from the select menu. This mode makes a selection that alternates selecting one and skipping one by default. You can change the selected and deselected order and offset the selection from its menu. This is a command that I use frequently and I highly recommend you use too. Under the select menu, we can make random selections with select random. We can select element with an angle greater than a certain value with sharp edges. Under select loop, select boundary loop will make your life a lot easier. For instance, you can select only the outer edge of a circular selection you made. Manually, making this kind of selection can be very difficult depending on your model. And with the select mirror, you can select the mirror image of a selected element on the axis of your choosing. If we extend the selection, we will have two sets of elements selected. The shortcut for this is Ctrl Shift M. By selecting an element and using the shortcut Shift G, you can make selection based on similarities to that element. For example, by selecting an edge and choosing length, you can select all edges of a similar length. Or, by selecting a vertex and choosing normal, you can select all vertices that are facing the same direction. Or with a face, you can select all faces with a similar number of sides. Finally, one of the most important selection commands is L for select linked. This allows you to select all the meshes that are linked to the selected mesh. Trust me, this is a much more important command than it seems and should definitely be remembered. If you can't remember some of the selection commands, or if you don't like use menus like me, you can use the F3 shortcut to type in command you want to use. Alternatively, if you plan to use a command often in a certain workflow, you can add it to your quick favorites menu beforehand and work much faster. I'm very glad we covered this lesson. As I said at the beginning of the lesson, selection commands are a crucial topic in Blender. I've covered the ones I use most frequently in this lesson. I hope you had as much fun as I did and found this lesson useful. Alright, I'll be waiting for you in the next lesson. See you then. By the way, if you are looking to learn geometry nodes from A to Z, mastering every single node along with practical use cases and pro tips, you should definitely check out my Udemy course. It's packed with enhanced information and awesome graphics. And for you, my amazing viewers, I have prepared a mega discount. If you want this resource to be a permanent part of your library and add significant value to your career and CV with a lifetime certificate, you can access the course using the discount code or through the link in the video description. And a huge shout out to all you amazing taggers who stuck around until the very end of the video. You guys are the best, seriously. If you wanna see more content like this, all you gotta do is hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And I'd absolutely love to read your thoughts in the comment section below. Until the next time, hasta luego.